An angel is used to show God's presence to his people.
In visions of God.
And the old temple versus the new temple.
All of this and more is coming up next on Quick Study. Stay there. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Rod Hembry.
I'm Janice.
And thank you for joining us today on Quick Study Television. It's a great day to be reading the Bible. Actually, it's a good day to read the Bible. And that's what we're doing today, the entire Bible. We're going to study, and one of the things we're going to study is Ezekiel 40 to 41. Now, when we study this, we realize as we peer into Ezekiel, hey, wait a minute, an angel is used to show God's presence to the people. What in the world is that about? We're going to find out what Ezekiel's talking about. It's going to be very interesting. Stay there. Now, we also have Bible archaeology and history. Corey?
Well, as the prophet Ezekiel gets a glimpse into the temple of God, even though he is currently in exile in Babylon in our reading today, I want to focus in on the first temple built by King Solomon.
All right, the first temple built by King Solomon. It's going to be a very good day. Do you know what is up?
Well, here's the setup. In Ezekiel's vision of the new city and the new temple, there was a man who had a measuring rod in his hand, and he stood in the gateway. Do you know how Ezekiel described his appearance?
In our reading today, in the latter part of the book of the prophet Ezekiel, we are getting a glimpse into the vision of Ezekiel as he sees the new Jerusalem and the new temple. But right now, I want to take a look at the first temple built by King Solomon. You know, there are naysayers that say, no way, that couldn't have happened. For many, the history of King Solomon in the Old Testament must be written off as fanciful exaggerations of a much lesser reality. Gold-plated temples and palaces with gold-covered floors and ceilings, an ivory throne overlaid with gold, extravagant precious metal articles for both religious and personal use, and large decorative golden shields are just a few of the wonders of Solomon's proposed kingdom. But what does history say? We may want the Bible to be lying and thus to discredit its uncomfortable theology, but what if it's telling the truth? The 10th century BC, the time of Solomon, hasn't enjoyed as many dramatic finds as other time periods. But this is a testament to the recycling nature of ancient builders. When short on space, it's often more productive to renovate previously existing structures, dismantling and reusing the old building materials. Even still, if Solomon's splendor has historic credibility, it should fit well into surrounding ancient cultures. There should be some affinity, some hint that this isn't myth. In fact, Solomon's practices do go well with ancient cultures, and are far less crazy than some would have us believe. Personal bowls, goblets, and plates of gold are known to have been in use with many ancient cultures. Decorative golden shields show up in lists of taken goods and reliefs of sacked temples in the records of Assyria. A little-known practice of the ancient Egyptians was the same as that of Solomon, overlaying pillars, rooms, and articles with plates of pounded gold, secured in such a way that the gold could be easily removed. The most famous intact examples come from the tomb of King Tutankhamun. We even have texts from the kings of Assyria explaining how they overlaid their temples with gold. Solomon's lavish throne of ivory, decorated with plated gold, finds parallels all over the ancient Middle East in destroyed remains of ivory couches, beds, and wall decorations. So, an applicable moral that we can pull from this study, alongside the knowledge that we can pull from this study, is just the fact that a healthy skepticism is good. But I put healthy in front of skepticism because there is such a thing as unhealthy skepticism. And that's simply when we just criticize something, or we're skeptical that something could be true just because we feel like it's probably not true, because our life experiences have shown us that something is unlikely. But the world, and especially history, is so much bigger than our individual life experiences. So when we go to criticize something like that we read in the Bible that is thousands of years older than you and I, we need to then move our skepticism into the healthy range of skepticism and actually have the guts to follow through on our skepticism and research and look, and not just be satisfied when we find someone saying the same thing as us, because we are always going to be able to find someone who agrees with our point. But the truth isn't about finding someone who agrees with us. A quest for the truth is to find what is really real. And yes, there is such a thing as truth.
And Corey, the answer to that question or that problem is healthy skepticism is very important, because even in things like the Da Vinci Code and all that, there's unhealthy skepticism, even though it's a written book like, fiction. But it's very interesting. Hey, listen, while I'm here, write for your pocket guide, because we're getting ready to go into the New Testament next month. And so if you would like to write, there's 32 pages here, 32 pages, one for every page of the month and then some. So it comes 12 in a year and one every month. Here is the address: P.O. Box 150, Murraysville, Pennsylvania, 15668-0150. Now listen, if you're in Canada, you can write to P.O. Box 456, Orangeville, Ontario, L9W 5G2, or you can call at 724-733-8336. In Canada, 519-940-8338. The vision of a new temple comes 25 years after the captivity of Jerusalem, on the 10th day of the month in the 14th year after the city was captured. Ezekiel has the vision, both real and true, in which he sees the temple of God, the people, and the new city. This is a vision of the future of Israel, but we cannot know when. Now, the image of the new temple is final. It cannot be worshiped or substituted as God. Let's explore.
Ezekiel chapter 40, verses 1 through 10. In the 25th year of our captivity, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year after the city was captured, on the very same day the hand of the Lord was upon me, and he took me there. In the visions of God he took me into the land of Israel, and set me on a very high mountain. On it toward the south was something like the structure of a city. He took me there, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of bronze. He had a line of flax and a measuring rod in his hand, and he stood in the gateway. And the man said to me, Son of man, look with your eyes and hear with your ears, and fix your mind on everything I show you, for you were brought here so that I might show them to you. Declare to the house of Israel everything you see. Now there was a wall all around the outside of the temple. In the man's hand was a measuring rod 6 cubits long, each being a cubit and a handbreadth. And he measured the width of the wall structure 1 rod, and the height 1 rod. Then he went to the gateway which faced east. And he went up its stairs and measured the threshold of the gateway, which was 1 rod wide, and the other threshold was 1 rod wide. Each gate chamber was 1 rod long and 1 rod wide. Between the gate chambers was a space of 5 cubits, and the threshold of the gateway by the vestibule of the inside gate was 1 rod. He also measured the vestibule of the inside gate, 1 rod. Then he measured the vestibule of the gateway, 8 cubits, and the gate posts, 2 cubits. The vestibule of the gate was on the inside. In the eastern gateway were 3 gate chambers on one side and 3 on the other. The 3 were all the same size. Also, the gate posts were of the same size on this side and that side. Ezekiel chapter 40, verses 1 through 10.
Thank you for staying with us. Rod Hembry here on Quick Study Television, Bible Discovery TV. It is a great day to study the Bible, and that is what we are doing today as we explore Ezekiel. Now, we come across this passage when we start at about Ezekiel chapter 40, and we go on through the end where we explore how that Ezekiel is shown the temple and the new city and all of that. And so it gets a little mystical and a little interesting. And so I wanted to bring you that attention as we get into this. I also want to remind you that on our Bible guide, which is our power guide, I have 4 points, but we're only going to cover 3 on the program because we don't have time for the 4 points. In our overview, we have this as a strong temple. And we're looking at the reading assignment being Ezekiel chapter 40 to 41. Now the focus is on Ezekiel chapter 40 verses 1 to 10. And as we look at this, we're interested. I want to talk about the man. What is the man all about? It's very interesting as we look at this. So when we focus on this particular passage, we tune our attention to what he is saying specifically, and we discover this. In the 25th year of our captivity, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year after the city was captured, on the very same day, the hand of the Lord was upon me. And he took me there. And in visions of God, he took me into the land of Israel. Remember that Ezekiel is by the river Chebar. That's where he lives, in Babylon. Anyway, and he set me on a very high mountain. And on it towards the south was something like the structure of a city. He took me there, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of bronze. He had a line of flax and a measuring rod in his hand, and he stood in the gateway. What I find interesting about this is the important part to remember that this particular man is here, and he's in this place. And Ezekiel says, I saw a vision, but the vision I saw was a man with a rod. Now, what do you think that means? I mean, if you're going to see a vision of something, you see a man with a rod who's going to measure things. It's true. Why? Because Ezekiel was being measured, things were being measured to him that he could relay it to the people of Israel. Now that's interesting, and we go to the first point. A man is seen who will show the temple to Ezekiel. Its measurements will be perfect. That's Isaiah chapter 40, verses 1 through 30. Now think about this. The man is showing the measurements of the temple and of the city and the things he's going to see. He's showing them to Ezekiel. These are perfect measurements. And this is interesting as we go along. So let's focus now on the next passage, verse 4. And the man said to me, Son of man, look with your eyes and hear with your ears. See and hear, and fix your mind on everything that I show you. For you are brought here so that I might show them to you. Declare to the house of Israel everything that you see. Now, I want you to pay attention to that because that's important. This passage of Ezekiel was written for Israel to see. When? Well, to see in the future. When is the future? Probably now or pretty close to now. And so Ezekiel is placed in this position. He's shown the perfect measurements. These measurements are to be positioned with Israel. Which brings me this point. A man is used to present Ezekiel with the measurements of the temple so that he can communicate it to Israel. Now, I want to tell you something. It's important that you understand this. The temple is very significant to the people of Israel. The temple is the house of God. It's the place where God is, the one place where God is, where He lives, in fact. And so Ezekiel brings the measurements and the various items of the temple to the people of Israel here. I find that absolutely fascinating. And so we go on then to the next passage, which is actually verses 5 to 8. It says, "Now there was a wall around the outside of the temple." It was surrounded by a wall. In the man's hand was a measuring rod, 6 cubits long. That's very long, by the way. Each being a cubit and a handbreadth. And he measured the width of the wall and the structure, 1 rod and the height of 1 rod. Now notice that it's the height of 1 rod. That's interesting. Verse 6. "Then he went to the gateway which faced east, and he went up to its stairs, and he measured the opening or the threshold of the gateway, which was 1 rod wide. And the other threshold was 1 rod wide." That's interesting. Now each gate chamber was 1 rod long and 1 rod wide. Between the gate and the chambers was a space of 5 cubits, and the threshold of the gate by the vestibule of inside the gate was literally 1 rod. He also measured the vestibule of the inside gate 1 rod. Now I want you to pay attention to this because this is very important. As we look at this, we understand that he's measuring these openings and these entranceways and all this, and they're all a specific width, 1 rod wide. But that brings me to this point. The man shows Ezekiel the measurements and how the temple is constructed. I love this part because this shows us how Ezekiel is communicated to of what the temple looks like and what the openings look like. Now we don't really know what all of this means, but we do understand this. God is showing Ezekiel the temple. Now there's a lot of people who will come up with, well, this times 6 divided by 4 plus 2 means this. Well, I know that. But the interesting point here is that God is showing Ezekiel what the future temple looks like. I find that fascinating. So as we study this, let's keep this in mind and focus on the next chapters.
Throughout the prophecies that we've read throughout, in our reading today, I should say, on Quick Study, there are mention of city gates. Now, to us, that may not mean a whole lot, but in the ancient world, the city gates were very important. Throughout the Old Testament of the Bible, there are interesting references to city gates. Abraham, in Genesis 23, negotiated a land purchase at the gate of a city. Boaz, in the book of Ruth, also negotiated for land at a city gate. Eli, in 1 Samuel chapter 4, died at a city gate where he had a chair, presumably as a leader of the people. King David also had a chair from which to address the people at a city gate, according to 2 Samuel 19. These examples and more reflect just how important the gates of a city were to its commerce, law, and practical defense. At its most basic level, a city gate is a doorway through the defensive walls that surrounded the city proper. Often, the road leading from the gate would form the main road of the city, and the main marketplace would be located just inside the city gate for ease of access to farmers and traveling tradesmen. Defensively, the gates of a city were the most vulnerable, so many tactics and gate designs were engineered to compensate for this. Bronze-covered wooden doors, guarded towers, and double or triple gate systems with paved plazas in between them, through which an enemy would have to vulnerably pass before reaching the city. These plazas have been a source of intrigue for historians. It is known from biblical and ancient sources that gates were places of gathering, commerce, and legal courts, but found within ruins of some city gates have also been shrines and religious quarters, exemplifying how intertwined religious beliefs, day-to-day life, and legalities were in the ancient Middle East. Permanent platforms and chairs have also been discovered within city gates, matching the Bible's description of seats for judges, leaders, and kings.
What does the UFO movement not want you to know? What is it that the Bible says about the UFOs seen and heard? Join us as Janice, Corey, and Rod entangle themselves in the UFO movement and the Bible. What does it mean to contact an alien species? Is there such a thing? What does it mean to have a close encounter of the third kind? Join us this month as we work through the images of UFOs, aliens, and more of the conspiracy movement ideas. For $25 or more, write to us for your DVD of the UFO movement and what it means to us now. In the United States, write to us at Post Office Box 150, Murraysville, Pennsylvania, 15668-0150. In Canada, write to us at Post Office Box 456, Orangeville, Ontario, Canada, L9W5G2. For faster service, you can call us in Canada at 519-940-8338 or in the United States at 724-733-8336. For a gift of $25 or more, you can also go online to give and download your video now at BibleDiscoveryTV.com. Ask for UFOs and the Bible.
Hey, thank you for staying with us here on Quick Study Television. It is a way to complete your reading of the Bible. That's what this program is all about, taking you through the Bible and introducing it to you. Now, next time on Quick Study Television, we're going to be looking at Ezekiel chapter 42 to 43. This is interesting. The glory of God is great. No man can enter into it unless he first falls down. That's a very interesting point to look at, and we'll talk about that next time on the Quick Study Television program. Do you know for the Bible?
I'm going to set it up a little bit here for you. In Ezekiel's vision of the new city and the new temple, there was a man who had a measuring rod in his hand, and he stood in the gateway. So, do you know how Ezekiel described his appearance?
How did Ezekiel describe the man, how he looked? Corey knows that for sure, right, Corey?
Nope. I can't remember.
What if he looks like metal?
I've read this so many times. Yeah, that's one of the options. He could look like fire. He could look like bronze. He could be dressed in white linen. But because you said metal, I'm going to assume that you're trying to give me a hint. So I'm going to go with my bronze option. Bronze.
She went with her bronze option.
The bronze option.
What do you say?
Well, let's read it. Ezekiel chapter 40, verse 3. Actually, I'm going to start in verse 2. In the visions of God, he took me into the land of Israel and set me on a very high mountain. On it, toward the south, was something like the structure of a city. Verse 3. He took me there, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of, first option, Bronze.
Bronze.
He had a line of flax and a measuring rod in his hand, and he stood in the gateway. Bronze. It was bronze.
Excellent job, Corey. Very good. It was bronze.
It was bronze.
This is interesting because this is part of the vision of Ezekiel. And so we want to encourage you on that. We also want to mention to you, just because we're mentioning this a few times because it's not going to happen after September.
Okay.
The tape, the DVD video that we have called UFOs in the Bible is available now. And so you want to get your copy for $25 or more. It helps out the ministry. It also helps you out. Now, you're going to want to write to us at P.O. Box 150, Murrysville, Pennsylvania, 15668-0150. In Canada, write to P.O. Box 456 up here in Orangeville, Ontario, L9W 5G2. We'll be looking for your letter today. In the Bible, we see detailed information on many unique subjects, maintaining balance in the world. We cannot see or completely understand the reason for them, but we do understand that they are important. Such is the case with the measurements of God's temple. Some believe they are important for the future. Others believe they are mystical allegories for interpretation. Whatever the case, the measurements are important simply because they are the Word of God. We must understand that the Word is meaningful. There is a great strength for living when we recognize the Word. So today we pray, Lord, help me to see your Word in all things. The Strengthen Your Mind segment today's program is this: where does the Bible say, and he believed in the Lord, and he accounted it to him for righteousness? Well, that's a hard one. If you think you know the answer to that, then go to BibleDiscoveryTV.com. Click on Strengthen Your Mind, and it'll take you to the page where all of the Scripture is. You'll enjoy it. I think you'll love it. And it's important for you to understand. You can wait for the Discovery Letter too. 1 month behind, it'll come. But I want to tell you something. Jesus Christ is real, and He's alive today, and He trusts in your work and your vision. And you say, well, God chose me, I'm okay. No, you have to choose God. That's up to you. And if you decide today that you want to follow Jesus Christ, pray to Him and say, Lord, I follow you. I need you today. I trust you, and there's some things in my life that aren't right, and I believe you rose from the dead. Help me, Father, today. I take you as Lord. This program today was brought to you because of the resources of givers and Discovery partners of Quick Study Television. Will you join us and become a Discovery partner today? You can support us with an offering in any amount by going to BibleDiscoveryTV.com.